meeting in person next week, but that since all of our in-person meetings at the campus have been canceled, we were able to have this opportunity instead. And it's very exciting since we now can reach a greater audience. Let's do my slide. Okay. Hopefully you guys don't see that. Okay. So this is just some updates for us. We have a new email address, and that's just mostly because we got tired of waiting for NC State to reinstate our old one. So we have this new email address. You'll still be receiving emails probably from me or Meredith, as well as this email address, but that way we can try to move into a more professional kind of email listserv situation instead of just whoever's that current president at the time. And with that, I wanted to just briefly, this is the information that we had listed in the invite, and as well as in the attachment. So if you would like to have any of like contact or any of the background information on our speakers, please, I can reshare that, but that is a really great opportunity to get to know some of our speakers today. We are going to begin with, I have to move my cameras, Ruth and Sandra, and they will give a talk today from their efforts. And you kind of, if you heard about that conversation going on in the beginning, and Azuero Panama, so we'll get to see maybe some nice views or just different kinds of things that are happening in the other world to kind of brighten our days. And then we'll hand it over to Rene for his talk. So with that, was there any questions, anything that anyone has for me before our speakers get started? Make sure no one's...
I think that's great. Thanks, Stephanie.
Okay, perfect. All right, so with that, I am going to, oh, that's for later, but something to look forward to. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Sandra and Ruth. And I will mute myself.
Okay, so I'll just say a couple of words before we get started, and Sandra is going to do well, basically all of our our presentation. So I really applaud the NC State chapter of ISTF for organizing this, and I got to meet some of your members at Yale ISTF this year and in some past years. I serve as Vice President of the Global ISTF board, and I just really want to reiterate that we're definitely here as a resource for you all as you work to strengthen your chapter and organize yourselves and everything. I know you have a long legacy of doing really exciting things with NC State and ISTF, and we just really want to be there as a support for you all. And so I think you have my email in the chat and on the screen, it flashed on the screen, and so really open to all kinds of communication. The other thing I want to do is introduce Sandra. I have worked with Sandra over many years as she's sort of grown in love for this organization we work with together. I'm on the board of an organization in Panama called the Azuero Eco Foundation, in English, Fundacion Pro Eco Azuero in Spanish, and we work to restore the tropical dry forest and do environmental education there. And I have the great pleasure of introducing Sandra, who's, in addition to being a great friend and an amazing cook, she's also an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, so comes to this from the business sector, and studied psychology as well, and an amazing community organizer, if I do say so myself. And so I'm really excited to be able to introduce her, and take it away, Sandra.
Thank you. Qué lindas palabras. Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, so my name is Sandra Vásquez. I am the Executive Director of the Fundacion Pro Eco Azuero, or the Azuero Eco Foundation. I am also a mother of 2 and a mother of 4 dogs. So please bear with me if you hear anything falling down around me or whatever, it's my kids or my dogs. And I have a non-working husband right now who's on my neck the whole day. So please bear with me. Okay, so this presentation is called Restoring a Tropical Dry Forest Ecological Corridor in the Azuero Peninsula. Let me just get this thing going. What happened here? Okay. If the presentation falls in any time, I'm gonna try to go back. Remember that we are in the tropics and we are in a rural side of Panama, so the internet might come on and off, but I'll try my best to stay with you. Okay, let me see. Okay, the Azuero Eco Foundation is a living laboratory located on Panama's Azuero Peninsula, focused on reforestation, habitat restoration, sustainable land use, and environmental education. We combine community outreach with science and fieldwork to create models that are scalable and replicable worldwide. The Azuero spider monkey is a subspecies of, it's an endemic subspecies of the spider monkey, and it's considered by the IUCN as critically endangered, and its major threats are habitat destruction and poaching. This is actually our flagship species, and as you can see, our logo is an Azuero spider monkey. I'm gonna first talk about the Azuero Peninsula so that you know and you get to know why we're based here in the Azuero Peninsula. The Azuero Peninsula is based in Panama, and it covers 3 different provinces, Veraguas, Herrera, and Los Santos. Our offices are actually here in Pedacit, but we work in all of Azuero. The Azuero Peninsula was once tropical dry forest, and today only 7% of it is forested. It is one of the most heavily deforested parts of Panama. Only 2% of tropical dry forest remains worldwide, making it one of the most endangered forest types. An expanding agriculture frontier is the main driver of deforestation in Azuero. Agricultural practices such as pesticide use, extensive cattle grazing, and riparian deforestation have worsened soil degradation and waterway contamination, decreasing the resiliency of remaining habitat. The main economic resources in Azuero: cattle ranching, farming, and fishing. In terms of Azuero's culture, the Azuerenses have cattle ranching embedded in their cultures. They are considered to be the farmers or cowboys of Panama. In this agrarian culture, you can see it in their music, their hobbies, the way they dress. They pass this way of living and knowledge generation to generation, and practices such as slash and burn, the use of pesticide, and heavy deforestation are everyday uses of land. And Santeños, or people from Los Santos, are known for being like the deforesters of Panama. What's left in Azuero today is a fragmented ecosystem. Isolated patches of tropical dry forest is what's left in Azuero. So the average home range needed by the Azuero spider monkey is 95 to 390 hectares. But the average forest patch size in Azuero is 47.5 hectares. As you can see, it's half of what the Azuero spider monkey needs. Climate change, a future under threat. So the Azuero Peninsula is part of the dry corridor of Central America and Panama's dry arc. The criteria used to define the corridor is based on the areas in which the dry season is longer than 4 months. So it stretches all the way from a little part of Guatemala, Honduras, a little part of Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and then just the Azuero Peninsula, the whole Azuero Peninsula in Panama. Exportation crops, what's happening right now in Azuero is that exportation crops are migrating to other parts of the country. Severe reduction in water levels of the most important rivers in Azuero, like the Parita River, Mensabe, La Villa, and Guarare. Melon and watermelon crops are moving to Veraguas and Chiriquí, which are other provinces in Panama. And for example, the artisan fibers that are used here in Azuero to produce, for example, the hats and things, we have artisans need to import it from other provinces as well, like the junco or the cogollo. you can't find it here in Azuero right now, and before they used to harvest here in Azuero. Each year, many cattle die during the dry season, causing heavy economic damages. Of course, it's one of their economic resources. In 2015, cattle lost an average of 40% of body weight and 48% of milk production. At least 2,500 cattle died in 2015, according to the Ministry of Agriculture. So this is our vision of change. It starts by researching, by doing strategic mapping. Through community outreach, we get to restore and monitor and evaluate at the same time to restore habitat. We are trying to create, or this is our vision, to create an ecological corridor in Azuero. The corridor extends, the final corridor extends 80 kilometers. It crosses 8 different counties, 3 different districts, and it is cut 8 times by important highways. It covers approximately 393 private property in a 200-meter radius, approx. So the main objective of the corridor, it's looking for connectivity of patches of forest in Los Santos. Using GIS to find an optimal route that unifies the patches of forest, it helps us identify and prioritize properties that surround the trace route. The methodology we used is first determine the key areas by the forest areas where we found spider monkeys or where spider monkeys were spotted. 2, select by physical variables, for example, the distance between patches of forest, distance between rivers, prioritize the larger patches of forest, give priority to the climate, to the area that has the appropriate climate of tropical dry forest. And 3, select social economic variables. For example, prioritize the land that's not used for cattle grazing and or agriculture, prioritize the areas farthest to roads, prioritize the larger properties, and avoid the mining area of the province, which we have here in Los Santos. So like I said, the corridor is 80 kilometers long. It's 10 kilometer, it has a 10-kilometer buffer zone on each side, and it crosses 393 approx private properties in a 200-meter radius. So this are like our main, the corridor is one of the pillars of our programs, is one of the main focus of our programs. And these are the different programs that we have in Fundacion Pro Eco Azuero. First, the sustainable land management, the restoration of the ecological corridor. We have a strategic reforestation program with local landowners. As of right now, we've planted more than 10,000 trees in the corridor. Our reforestation is with native and fruit species. We have a sensitize and training campaigns for volunteers and local landowners. We have a monitoring system of each seedling planted. We use a reforestation web map with ArcGIS. We actually give an ID to each planted tree to monitor. We monitor reforestation parcels through drones. This was just implemented last year. And we replant. We have a seed collection, like a seed collection club and a tree nursery. In-house, in our office, we have a native and fruit species tree nursery, and we are building the capacities of community tree nurseries. What happened, the last administration, the last Panamanian government, they gave away lots and lots of seedlings for the people to plant because they're part of the 20 by 20 that Rene's gonna talk about that, I guess, but they're part of the 2020 initiative, and they have 1 million hectare Alianza por el Millón. It's called. Ruth, if you can translate, I would appreciate.
Sure, yeah, I think in English it would be like the Alliance for 1 Million Hectares, which is sort of Panama's bond challenge commitment. They've committed to restoring 1 million hectares countrywide, which is quite a substantial commitment given how small the country is.
So to help that initiative, what they did last government was that they gave away a lot of seedlings so that people could reforest on their own. And most of the community tree nurseries that they sold trees, they went bankrupt because nobody wanted to buy from them. So what our approach is actually like in increasing this or empowering these communities to have their own tree nurseries, and we buy seedlings for them to use on our reforestation program. We have a seed collectionist club. Because we reforest with native species, we have to collect seeds all throughout the summer, starting from this approximately in December and ending in May. As of right now, what we're doing is collecting a lot of seeds and planting them so that we can be ready for our reforestation season, which the reforestation season starts with the rainy season that starts in May. So we're a member of the Alianza por el Millón, and we're an active member of the watershed committees 124 and 126 that's here in Los Santos. We have another program is mapping and research. We have an Azuero resource center we have an Azuero's plant database that it's open source that you can find in our webpage. We have a physical environmental library in our office. We have different eco guides that people can use to guide themselves, for example, to build a living fence, or how to do an organic, how do you say, huerto? Ruth?
Yeah, an organic garden.
An organic garden, sorry.
El huerto, yeah.
Yeah, collaboration with local and international universities. We work with Esri Panama, which is ArcGIS. We work with Flying Labs, which is a laboratory based in the Technological University here in Panama. And they are giving us all directions how to monitor with drones or reforestation parcels. We have a national and international students internship. We have national and international volunteer programs and social work from high school and university students locally. One of our strongest programs is environmental education. We have the Azuero Spider Monkey School Initiative, which consists of 8 schools in Los Santos, which are part of our corridor. We do 2 annual visits to each school, where we take an Azuero-based environmental education curriculum of 3 years. So it's kind of a knowledge letter that we give each year. We have school kits with games and environmental activities tailor-made for Azuero by experts. And we impact approximately 250 kids per year. We have the Pro Eco Pelao kids, or Pro Eco Pelaos, which is a group of kids ages 5 to 14 that meet in our office once a week to learn environmental subjects and conduct scientific tours. And they engage with the Pablo Barrios Wildlife Refuge, which is the closest wildlife refuge we have in our office in Pedací. Environmental high school student groups, we have 2 of them in IPTA Tonosí and IPTA Las Minas. We've helped them create their CBO, or community-based organization. And we give them workshops to build their capacities, the use of drones, the leadership, grant writing projects, among others. Last year, we formed an Eco Artisan Association group in Azuero. As of right now, we have 23 members. And we've given them artisanal innovation workshops. We've given them workshops of sowing and harvesting artisanal plants as well. And we've planted artisanal gardens in different communities. By artisanal gardens, I mean natural fibers that the artisans can use to produce innovative crafts or artisans. In terms of community engagement, we have tons of community events. We have Earth Day, which is one of our biggest events during the year. We have campfire and tales of olden days night in each community, where we, after we finish the school initiative, we give them this night activity for all the communities, in which we do bonfires and kids do s'mores, and they and all the grandparents are there, and they tell their stories from back in the day, that how was the ambience in Azuero back in the day, and how it's changed. And this is super key for us, because we use this as an opportunity to engage to the community and get other reforesters that are interested in reforesting their lands, other farmers that are interested in reforesting their lands, so that we can later approach them for a reforestation program. We have Good Deeds Day, Global Big Day. We started that last year. In 2019, we were able to place the Pablo Barrios Refuge as a hotspot for bird watching in Panama. We've done social innovation workshops. We have the Christmas party for the kids of the Spider Monkey School Initiative and the Pro Eco Pelaos. And we have a program that's called Invited Experts, where we have like experts of different, like we're doing right now, experts of different branches that can give like workshops in our office to the communities. Our supporters and networks, we have National Geographic, Voluntarios ONU, Ponte en Algo, Global Giving, Sumarse, Lata Foundation. Right now we're working with Fundación Natura here in Panama, and we're working with the UNDP too. And if you're interested for more about Pro Eco Azuero, learning more, these are one of our videos that you can, we can send them to you, so that you can see how we monitor our ecological corridor, or how we work with the Pro Eco Pelaos, and if you want to learn more about the refuge that's near our office. And last year we were nominated, well, Ruth was nominated for a program here in Panama that's called Héroes por Panamá, Heroes for Panama. And there's the video that you can see what the organization does as well. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer them.
So if we want to take a few minutes, and if anyone has any questions before we move on to our next presentation.
Yeah, Oh, go ahead, Ruth.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add that both Sandra and I think, unfortunately, have to go and can't stay for the quarantinis, but we do want to encourage you all to reach out to afterwards about anything. We know that a lot of people's schedules are in flux right now. Some people might be looking for virtual internships or a new research opportunity or something like that. And so we're always there to facilitate those types of connections and see if there's a way we can work together, even in this sort of crazy time. So please ask away.
Thanks, Sandra and Ruth. That was really interesting. I'm curious about how many people do you have working on staff? It seems like you have a lot of initiatives going on, leading school groups and tours.
So we're actually kind of octopus. We manage all our programs with very few employees, but we have tons of volunteers. All our work, like our reforestation, our work with schools, is all based upon volunteers. So working right now, we're only 4 employees, like full-time, but we have tons of volunteers that work with us all the time.
That's great. And then building on Ruth, what you said about you have students sometimes help out, or internships, or any kind of research opportunities. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Either one, I don't know. Ruth or Sandra.
Yeah, so we have, of course, in this time, it's kind of hard. We always have, for our reforestation season, most of our interns or volunteers come from different universities around the world. For example, we've Ruth came as a volunteer from Princeton, if I'm not mistaken. She started like that with us, right? But
I came as a,
Mhm.
oh, I was just going to say, I came as a researcher. And then oddly enough, we worked to found the organization. Little did I know on like a study abroad, like research thing, that I'd end up staying here for more than a decade.
Yeah, so we do have internships for reforestation season, or we have research opportunities as well. Right now, because everything is virtual, we do have virtual opportunities for volunteers that we can further discuss, of course, if you're interested.
Yeah, I teach an undergraduate course, and I think this would be interesting opportunities for some students. Yeah, so I don't know if either you or Ruth have like information or something you can send to Stephanie or I. That would be awesome. We could send it along.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I should also say for the teachers on the call, so there are many different ways that we've worked with the research community in the past and academic communities, everything from professors who want, I mean, obviously not right now, but who want to lead field courses, but you know, want that a little bit of extra assistance in terms of the logistics, and want to tie in their academic topics to like practical topics on the peninsula. And we have a lot of dynamics here. I mean, obviously deforestation, reforestation, fires, seasonality, drought, tourism, coastal impacts. So there's just sort of watershed work. And so there's a lot to be done there. And then wildlife refuges, marine life, the impacts, you know, on agriculture, on marine life and coral reefs and things like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can just be unpacked, climate change, mitigation, adaptation, et cetera. And then we also work with professors and students to publish research. For example, now we have, as we speak, we have an undergrad who's the principal author on a chapter that's brought together professors, graduate students, and some of our staff from the organization to publish on those types of things. And then also just internships, like I said, courses, internships, volunteering, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's great.
Thank you.
So for those of you that are just joining us, we were just having some quick Q&As with our speakers just finished up. So if anyone else has any questions, feel free before we move on. And okay, that was just for the chat. And I know Ruth, you and Sandra said that you can't stay for the quarantinis, which is absolutely fine. We're more than appreciative for you all, you know, participating in this and kind of joining us and sharing with us during this time. But if anyone, I do have both emails, so that if anyone has any other questions or would like your contact information, I'll share this presentation, and as well just re-mention everyone's contact information, so that if anyone would like to do research or just kind of just stay in contact, they're able to do that.
Of course, yeah. And if you're ever by Panama,
Great.
any one of you can join us and volunteer with us for a couple of days at least. You can find all our information too in our webpage, or follow us on social media, our social media handle. Most of the information is in Spanish in our social media, but you can see our events and you can see what we're doing and what we're up to. So it's at Pro Eco Azuero. In Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, it's the same. Okay. And then we have cool videos in YouTube as well that you can find us by Pro Eco Azuero as well.
All right.
So thank you very much for your time. This was fun, and I hope you have fun in the happy hour.
Thank you. We could clap, but I don't know how effective that would be.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much.
Be well.
Thank you. You as well. Stay safe. All right. So now we're going to move on to our next presenter. I was honored enough to meet him actually at the Yale 26th annual convention that they host for ISTF. And he approached me after I gave a lecture on my master's thesis work on silvopasture. So I was very eager to share that detail because now I'm working on my PhD work. So silvopasture sounds really exciting again. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rene, and he can speak today and share his work with you all.
Thank you, Stephanie. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so, and can you see my screen now? It should show the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, I just want to share with you, well, first, thank you for the invitation. I am also board member of the ISTF Global. I represent the Americas, tropical Americas. I am from Guatemala, and but work here in the US in the World Resources Institute in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to share with you one of the tools that we develop in the institute and that we are using for landscape restoration. I'm going to show you the tool, how it works, and also some examples of how we use it. And basically, it's around social landscapes. We at least I'm a forester, and as a forester, a lot of things about engineering, about maps, biophysical things. But when you start to look at how things work, and how you need to take into account the perception of the people, all the sectors, what they want to achieve, it's very important to understand that social perspective, and that's something that it really fills a gap now on planning when you plan policies around restoration, because policies that we are planning, at least the ones in Africa and Latin America recently, are people-centered. So basically, we would like to improve livelihoods of people. We would like to bring more development to people. And so I also really appreciate the great presentation that Sandra and Ruth gave before, because it really set you in that context. That's we would like to have more successful cases as the one that Sandra shows in the region and in many countries in the world. But to focus in this methodology, social landscapes, basically, it's trying to identify actors that are related to restoration. Restoration, how we understand restoration is basically, at WRI, we are the Secretariat of Initiative 20 by 20, which is a regional movement that is in support of the Bond Challenge. The Bond Challenge was an international call for restoration. Initially 150 million hectares, now it's 350 for 2030. And from the Bond Challenge, we have basically two initiatives that are supporting this. And the regional initiatives are FR100, which is Africa, 100 million hectares for 2030, and 20 by 20, and the one that I work more directly, which is 20 million hectares for 2020, and now 50 million hectares for 2030. And how this, what we mean when we talk about restoration, restoration not only means, coming back to original or a state of, or the state, the baseline, how the forest was 500 years ago, because in many cases that is not feasible with social conditions we have in the countries. So it's very important, to include the landscape approach, which is basically restoring certain areas of the landscape with different activities. Not only, ecological restoration is one. If you can do it, that's good. But we also are looking for agroforestry systems, silvopasture system that can basically restore some of the ecosystem services that are lost because of the degradation. And so in a sense, landscape restoration involves many actors, not only in the forestry sector, environmental sector, or agricultural sector. It's a cross-institutional problem, and we need to deal with all the different perspectives, including in many cases cities, because cities are in the middle of these areas that are affected. what you see in the slide is just the countries. The way how this process started was more a political process where a country commit hectares to restore, and based on that, you know, they try to enable a program to restore the land that they are willing to. So the biggest commitment we have in the region, at least in Latin America, is Mexico. It's 8.5 million hectares. And then we have other countries that you see there. What you see here, the numbers you see here are political commitments, not really implementation in the ground. And that's where we see, you know, that this tool that I'm gonna show you can help, and is helping in some cases. So the discussion for us is basically, you know, why social landscapes, how to map the connectivity, the priorities, and visualize how you can visualize these social landscapes. The same way we visualize biophysical landscapes, as we can go out to an image and see the forests and the lakes and the rivers. What we want to see here is the perceptions. Why perceptions? Is because, you know, people behaves by perceptions. Basically, you go to a restaurant because probably you like the drinks. The food probably is not great for you, but the drinks are good. So then you go there for the drinks. But for other person, it could be the food. The reason why you go to that restaurant, it's just perceptions, and that's why people really interact. So there is a perception, for example, from the farmers that if you talk about restoration, probably it's too much about forestry and planting forests in the agricultural lands. But in the other side, if you ask to a forester, then restoration might be different things. So it's important to capture all these perceptions. And the idea of the social landscapes is also to create a network of actors, because in many cases you need to identify all the actors that are involved in a process. The benefits is you can identify who are the actors that are involved in the process, how the actors are connected, how influential are, what are the role of the actors in the network, and what are the priorities they have. And in terms of the actors, just let me say here that this is based on the perceptions of the people. If you have there 4 people from the agricultural sector, you will capture the perception of that people. So if you want to capture the perception of foresters, then you need to invite foresters too. You want to capture the perception of people that works in other areas, then you have to bring them to the table too. So it's basically perceptions. It's not like the typical sampling process that you can take a representative sample of each sector, and then you can do that, but then it sometimes is very difficult in practice to do that. So how, you know, this could encourage a positive impact is basically when you have different people interacting, you can have an organized discussion around a topic. So for example, if you have a problem that you know, how you restore agricultural lands, for example, where you have sugarcane plantations. So it's very difficult to tell the farmer, you know, you need to cut all your sugarcane and then plant trees. That's not feasible. So then you need to start to negotiate, basically to reach an agreement and reach a common point, like why we don't restore riparian forests, for example. So then you have to start discussing, you know, how this can be feasible and how this can benefit not only the crop that they are planting, but also the ecosystem services that you are producing. So it generates a good discussion that you can then use for planning. How this was inspired, basically, well, we are now living in a pandemic, but that shows, you know, how a virus can be spread to different countries. So most of the science around this, in many parts, was used in public health. But also, you know, there are other initiatives that have been used in this analysis too. And for example, when you want to understand, you know, how the information, when you are looking for information in natural resources, where do you look at information, depending on if you're a man or you're a woman, then it's different, no? So, but for that, you need to capture the perceptions. For example, in this chart that you see in this figure that you see here, you see that women when you ask for information, they ask more to elders, to church, to community leaders, and men try to look more sources outside, like in the cooperatives, because probably they have access to that, which means something. So if you want to reach women, you cannot go to probably the associations that are around, because you will reach probably men only. And that's sort of the things that you can start trying to understand when you run this analysis. The connectivity, in terms of the connectivity of the networks, you can decide what to ask to the participants or to the stakeholders in this case. I mentioned before that this was about information, but it could be other things like finance, how the finance flows from one actor to the other, how seed supplies flow from one actor to the other in order to massify restoration with native species, for example. It could be authority to understand the authority and what are the organizations that have more authority in the topic and that really influence the decisions at a very high level. So one of the things that I like for the methodology is very participatory. It's a participatory process, basically. You have the people, you invite the people in a workshop setting, and then the people contribute with the discussions. You always have to define a question. For example, the question could be, who influences restoration? Or how the information around restoration flows between different actors. And you can do that analysis and you can see how people react. And you might be surprised, because what you see that you might have some some ideas of how this will, how the results will shape, but you don't know until you hear all the perspective from all the stakeholders. So the other thing is you need to identify the actors. Of course, the actors depend on the people that is participating in these groups and how they perceive, the topic. So for example, one experience that we have in one country is we were talking about restoration, and then somebody mentioned, the army is a very important actor in restoration, and nobody was expecting that because army restoration doesn't make sense. But it happened that in that government, the government assigned some funds to the army, so then they can go to plant trees. So it's related. It's an important actor, but nobody knew unless this person, only when this person said that. Also, you need to allocate the links. For example, you are talking about information. You need to be able to say, the information goes from this actor to the other actor, or it's a two-way channel where the actor sends information but also receives information. So you can play with those things. You can add another level also to see if the information, or for example, in the cases of authority, if the authority is negative or positive, you can add those things. So you can play with those variables too if you want. You can also play with if it's influential or not, and you can have some scoring system that can allow you to do that, for example, from 1 to 4, or from 1 to 3 most influential, 1 less influential, and things like that. This is just, how it looks like when you start putting all the connections between the different actors. It's just a big mess, but then everything starts to make sense once you put it there in an organized way, and that's where the visualization comes into play that I will mention later. As I was mentioned to you, there might be surprises like the army, like when we discuss about the army actor as an important actor in restoration. There might be actors that you believe that are important, but they are not well connected. For example, it happens in many countries that the agricultural sector doesn't really talk with the environmental sector, just because, the history, Ministry of Agriculture has more power, more money to manage compared to the Ministry of Environment, which has probably less money and less influence. So it's very difficult to establish all those connections, and those are the things that is interesting to hear from the people. And again, this is just perceptions, you know. This is just perceptions of the people, and it's important to capture them, because then you understand why people act in some ways. This is an example from the network, the 20 by 20 that I mentioned. In 20 by 20, we have different technical partners, being Azuero, one of them. But in 2017, we made an analysis on how the information flow between partners, and you can see here, you know, the different actors. And WII, of course, as the secretary of 20 by 20, it's an important actor that receives a lot of the information, but we realize also that there are many actors in the periphery that doesn't either receive or produce information that is relevant for other actors. So we will need to work on that to see how we improve the communication in the network in terms of information. In terms of, you know, I showed you before here, for example, this is a big mess. Once you finish the analysis in a workshop setting, you will have a lot of connections, but you don't see anything clearly. So now there is a list of packages that you can use to put the information and visualize the information in a clear way. I particularly I prefer actually Kumu, which is, it has a free version. Also, you can pay for one version if you want to have access to all the tools. But there are others here that you can use to put the information in a visual manner. I will show you just some examples that we have. Excuse me here. For example, this is one example that we have. This is Honduras. This is how information around restoration flows. Sorry, this is Colombia. And this is how information around monitoring flows in the network. Let me just start by explaining you the question. We started with a question in Colombia, which was, you know, what is the monitoring indicators? What are the indicators that the institutions are monitoring right now? And how the information flow from one actor to the other? That was the question that we asked. And you have the question there in Spanish. But the question was, you know, who are the actors that are monitoring and how the information is flowing from one actor to the other in terms of restoration? The information could be forest, could be water, could be people, could be social aspects, could be many areas. And then the idea, this is just an example, you know, is identifying the actors. For example, you see here the actors as nodes, and then the information. So the idea was to identify, you know, corporaciones. The corporations in Colombia provide information to IDEAM, which is the monitoring group at the government on hectares for restoration, for example. Or IDEAM produces a layer of forest cover every year in hectares and gives that to National Planning Department. So those are the things that we wanted to capture. So that was just an example. And what we found is this thing that you see here. So we have IDEAM, which is, as I say, the institution that monitors, in charge of the environmental monitoring in the country. And we expected that, you know, that IDEAM will be a central actor in monitoring because it's its mandate to do it. But then we realized that we saw, as part of the perception of the actors, that the power companies, the hydropower companies, are also a big actor here. And we asked why. And the reason is because, you know, they depend on water. And so they have a very robust system of indicators, and they produce a lot of information for their use, but they also share the information. But it's very interesting that they are producing high quality information that they might share with the other institutions so they can improve the general information system or reporting system. There are other things that you can see in the network. Again, as I mentioned before, these are perceptions of the people. This is not, you know, the truth. This is just the perception, how the people perceive this problem. But it's very useful if you are planning a process, because then you understand why some people is acting in some ways. Just to finalize, this is the Honduras example. that I was mentioned before. And in this question, in this network that you see here, we asked them a different group of stakeholders from the coffee sector, sugar sector, government, who are the ones who has to receive the information in order, technical information in order to implement restoration. And surprisingly, at least for me, you know, because for me, the ones who have to receive the information are the landowners. But for them, for the people that was participating in this workshop, were not the landowners. They have the municipality, the government has to control the information before it reaches the landowners. But the ones who centralize everything in this case are municipalities, which is interesting, you know, because then start thinking, well, then is there extension services at the municipalities? And then you realize there is no extension services. So then how you're gonna create this information hub if they don't have the capacity to do it? So then you understand, then you can basically explain and try to design some strategies with the decision makers. So you can sort of explain to the people, you know, you think that municipalities are important, but then there is no infrastructure that can help to operationalize this process unless, you know, you hire a lot of extensionists and create a big program for extensionists at the municipality level. So just so you know, some of the ideas that you can get out of this analysis. Sorry, just wanted to mention here. So to finalize, so this is, once you have the results, this is a continuous process. You know, you obtain the results, you obtain the perception of the people. But what happened if the main leader of a sector couldn't attend the workshop because he was not interested, or he wanted to go, or he was in another activity? So we didn't capture that. So the idea is that you capture those results, but then you try to repeat the results as new actors are involved. And that's a continuous process. Of course, at some point you need to stop and you need to make your plan and then release your plan and launch your plan. But you know, this is the starting point of a discussion that can provide you with more information. We have used this tool to facilitate the National Restoration Plan in Chile, which yesterday we just heard that the Chile included restoration in their NDCs, in the NDC enhancement process that the countries are doing for the Climate Change Convention, which is very interesting, because part of the case when we put restoration as an important topic for mitigation came from a social landscape analysis we did in Chile in the 16 regions that they have in the country. We have been using this tool also in Honduras, where we are supporting monitoring, in Colombia, in Nicaragua, in El Salvador also we used it for monitoring when the government created the first monitoring system for landscape restoration in Latin America. So there are many applications of this, and if you want more information around the tool, there is a report in WRI webpage. I can give you the address in the chat. And we are finishing a chapter on the cases that just mentioned it in Honduras, in Chile, a book chapter that it will be available probably in a couple of months on this topic. So I'm just going to stop here and welcome any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I was going to start, if that's okay. I had a question. You kind of hinted on this, and it could be some of the differences in how like extension type work is available in other countries. But I was wondering, in that plan action diagram, where extension would lie, since they're kind of semi-academic, semi-government. And I thought you hinted on a little bit, but just to kind of wrap my head around it.
Yeah, maybe, one of the things, let's see, how we are using this analysis is basically a country makes a commitment to the bond challenge, let's say 1 million hectares. And then they have to implement a plan or a roadmap at least to implement that pledge in the ground. And in order to do that, they need to identify first who the actors are involved in the restoration landscape, let's say, and how they interact. So how we are using this tool is basically we map the actors with them in the different regions in the country. And then we capture all the perceptions from the different sectors, how agriculture perceives restoration. If the question is about finance, who is going to finance this? Is the private sector, is the public sector? And if it's the public sector, is there any policy instrument that they have? If not, then in the plan, we will need to include probably the development of a policy instrument, let's say incentive or payment for ecosystem services in order to implement the pledge. So basically what I would say is the social landscape or the social network analysis allows us to identify all these problems that will affect implementation in the ground. And it's been very useful because in any country, in my country, for example, we have many plans. We have plans very big, 100 pages and things like that, but nobody uses it. And the reason is because they don't have practical items where you can really operationalize, restoration. And in terms of practical items, like, for example, extensionists, you need extensionists, then you need to provide resources so you can create a program of extension in the municipality level, for example. If you need incentives, you need to create a program at the government level to support farmers to do that by doing payments or tax reliefs, or it's something that it helps you for planning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions? Let me check the chat. All right. Well, Rene, if you're going to be available for our happy hour, everyone's more than welcome to ask him any other questions or kind of just have more informal talks. And we'll kind of at this point open our kind of session up to our happy hour. If anyone needs to take a break, step away for a minute, absolutely. And, try to enjoy a little bit left of Friday.
It looks like